From the trade hub of the ancient Silk Road to the popular travel destination with beautiful scenery and profound cultural heritage, Xinjiang has always been the mysterious land in our mind. Unfortunately, terrorism and religious extremism had cast a long shadow over the region. During the International Seminar on Counterterrorism, De-radicalization and Human Rights Protection, I was given the opportunity to exchange views with experts on counterterrorism and human rights from all over the world and visit various parts of Xinjiang to see for myself the results in the fight against terrorism and extremism and the development of human rights protection in the region. Seeing is believing. I was greatly impressed by the warm classroom environment and active participation of the students at Kashgat Vocational Skills Education and Training Center. These young people who once went astray told me that by learning Mandarin, vocational skills and basic legal knowledge, they are full of hope for the future and wish to create wealth with their own hands to provide a better life for their families. Now please join me for a series of interviews with experts and scholars where we have more in-depth discussion on the long-standing issue of countering terrorism and extremism, as well as China's development path and its role in global governance. Every government has its own responsibility to ensure public safety and well-being, and China is no exception. Xinjiang has long been plagued by terrorism and religious extremism, which pose a serious threat to the lives of the people in the region. Therefore, the Chinese government has made enormous effort in maintaining peace and stability in Xinjiang, which is also known for being a new frontier. So what is the situation in the region? What are the misunderstandings? And how has China pursued its own objective of fighting against terrorism and extremism? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined by Ahmed Abadi, Secretary General of the Mohammedan League of Religious Scholars. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Ray. Welcome to Dialogue, sir.
Thank you. My honor.
Xinjiang is currently one of the major headlines that attract Western media attention. Today we are here to attend a seminar talking about how to de-radicalize religious extremism and fight terrorism, so on and so forth. The core issue is human rights. Now, obviously, violence has caused abusive behavior in many ways. What do you think of the importance of fighting terrorism in Xinjiang at this moment for the Chinese authorities? And I believe the Western media, the rest of the world, are listening.
Well, what I've witnessed in Xinjiang is that a very unique best practice has been shaped by the Chinese government. And the uniqueness of this approach derives from its multidimensionality. It has the software and soft power, but it has also the securitarian dimensions. All this is anchored in serious scientific research. Before elaborating any project, there is a serious research behind it, and there is a mode of evaluation for what cannot be evaluated, cannot be evolving nor improving. And also there is a clear integration of the local people by giving them capacitation, by leading them how to rise in a very clear win-win situation with the rest of the Chinese people. And this was apparent because what motivates this heavy investments, we're talking about over $10 billion in the region, is the return on that investments. Already the tourism is bringing return on investments. Also the great natural capacities are there, water-wise, mineral-wise, and so on. And this is what has convinced the Central Committee and convinced the Chinese people to accept such investments, because it is in the frame of Belt and Road Initiative, Silk Road Initiative. It is within the frame of keeping the country peaceful. It is within the frame of helping co-citizens, and it is in the frame of engaging in this global war against terrorism. So what I've witnessed so far is a unique best practice that deserves to be shared with the rest of the world.
Yes, indeed, fighting terrorism is not just a series of battles, but it's a war. It's a fight for elimination of religious extremism. But what do you think of President Xi Jinping's leadership and his vision in navigating our cause of development and in ensuring peace and co-prosperity? We always keep in mind the idea and the importance of the idea, live and let live. The issue is whether Uyghurs would share this vision. From the point of view of a Moroccan and a serious scholar that studies the issue of human rights, what do you think of the role that President Xi and the Chinese government and its leadership are doing and playing to ensure a bright future that could be shared by not only people in Xinjiang but the rest of the world?
One of the Moroccan wisdoms says that there are always, to any issue, two gates: the gate of beauty and the gate of majesty. The gate of majesty is the hard way. It's majestuous, it's salient, it's imposant, but there is also the gates of beauty, which tackles the matters softly but efficiently. And the kamal, because in Arabic beauty is jamal, and majesty is jalal, and there is kamal. It rhymes together, is merging the two approaches. This is what I've witnessed through observing the approach of this applied visionary, Mr. President Xi Jinping. And what I've observed as well is that there is always the deepening of research, know-how, and exploration, observation, but also the follow-up and the technical dimensions that need to merge together to give birth to something factual, measurable, that would serve the interests of the people now, but also in the future, not just the near future, but medium and far future. So this is clear and salient, as I said, and it gathers the beauty and the majesty in the same time, but in a democratic way, because we haven't heard any protestations within the Chinese territory about those investments, because it has been made clear that there will be a return on investment. Of course, terrorism is an amalgamation of factors. It is not one simple phenomenon. It has its emotional dimensions, its intellectual dimensions, its factual field dimensions, but also its historical trauma and its historical calculation, its historical rivalries, and this is all amalgamated, and we need to dive in the depth of all those matters in the same time, but in a dimensioned, in a dosed manner, to have the contextualized response to this disease. And here we shall not stick with prevention. We need to mutate towards immunization. And this is exactly what I've witnessed in Xinjiang. There is this approach that immunizes and tackles the roots in the cosmology and in the worldview held by the people in this province.
Your academic wisdom and intercultural wisdom is highly appreciated in this context of Xinjiang. What do you think of, say, the fundamental reasons and the hotbed that fuels the rise of extremism in the late 20th century following the end of the Cold War?
Extremism has developed emanations that are realistic, to the point that we can qualify them as beings who think, who breed hatred and massacres, who infiltrate, who grow, who hunt, and who recruits. So it's a being. and we need to look at it as being such. Two, it has layers. One, there is this dimension which is very attractive, and we can talk here about 5 big magnetisms. One, the dream of unity. In the case of the Muslim world, since 1924, after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, many countries found themselves in the status of orphans because they were not trained to make decisions. And all of a sudden, there was no capital for them, and they were obliged to take their own decisions, which was very difficult because they were not skilled nor trained to do so. So this dream of unity is very magnetic and attractive, and those extremists promise this unity that would give authority and power and re-embrace the great fame and the great power of the old days. So it speaks to the deprived people, frustrated people who are without a horizon, and this is something that we need to tackle in this arena of dreams, of Morpheus. The second big dream is the dream of dignity. Jobless, come to me, I'll make out of you Minister of Defense, or maybe the head of intelligence, or maybe the Minister of Finance. Just come. I'll name streets by your name. Come. Moneyless, I'll give you the money of God. Wifeless, I'll marry you to the most beautiful and pious lady in the world, and name it. The third magnetism is the magnetism of purity. Come to us and we will teach you in Islamotopia how to practice religiosity the way the Prophet of Islam practiced it. 4, the dream of salvation. This is the end of times, and you better book your siege on the Arch of Noah, otherwise it will be too late. Come before it is too late, because apocalypse is about to happen. 5, the dream of mastery. In those complicated times leading to confusion and perplexity, they offer a binary system: licit, illicit, divine, evil, paradise, hell, here and hereafter, correct, incorrect, etc. And it gives such a relief for the lazy spirits and minds so that they go and embrace. The second layer is a layer of grievances: conspiracy against the Muslim world by the West, colonialism, Israel, double standard, humiliation in the press and in the media, the Iraqi, Afghani, Bosnian, Herzegovinian, name it, cocktail, the draining of the wells and the selling of oil cheaper than water. 8, the infiltration of the value system in education and so on. 9, the falsification of history and geography. 10, last but not least, insulting the Prophet and burning the Quran. And those cowards, heads of states, they would say, are not doing anything about that. We are going to correct it for you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your insightful analysis about the Islamic studies and how you look at the importance of fighting extremism and how to de-radicalize the extremism. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. Ahmed Abadi, Secretary General of the Mohammedan League of Religious Scholars. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us, please. China prospered and followed our own roadmap. This has created serious trade wars and ideological frictions between the United States and China. Whether there is a shock therapy, a universal therapy, or China should be given the leeway, the latitude to think about its own future, its own way.
I love this concept that has been developed by Mr. Xi Jinping of common destiny, which realizes indeed that this planet is tiny. We need to work hard to build up this peace process.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
despite controversies surrounding the definition of terrorism and extremism, it seems to be a common mission for people around the world to fight extremism, which is so harmful for the peace and co-prosperity. Having said this, let's look at this special year, 2019, that witnesses the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. We are in a festive atmosphere, but there is, however, this factor of uncertainty in Xinjiang. Now, we appreciate the sympathy and understanding that a Moroccan scholar presents on this occasion of the international seminar. Let's look at our bilateral relationship. How important is this relationship for China to be integrated into the vast majority of Africans, with Morocco being a very good friend?
Of course, the know-how that China has developed and accumulated throughout not just decades but millenniums, and it is there, and you can feel it in the air, on the ground, in reality. China also has developed antibodies to fight against atrocities, against pain, against injustices, against problems, social, economical, educational problems. China also has developed a functional humility to go and seek knowledge wherever it is. And by the way, we have a wisdom in Islam that says, seek knowledge even in China. The Prophet of Islam said this 14 centuries ago, and even was used just to allude to the distance, and nothing is far. But China has shown this great functional humility to go and seek power and spend all the necessary investments for this.
Ahmed, we keep our fingers crossed. We hope that all things would go well in the special year. What do you think of the Chinese way of engineering its own peaceful rise and development?
To look at the surrounding challenges, to take them in consideration, to take in consideration as well and integrate the socio-economic strategic ingredients and dimensions. This know-how has proven to be the results of the long and tenacious labor of a group of applied visionaries that have compiled expertise, but that have developed a way to draw know-how from the various levels of the society. And you really deserve this name, the People's Republic of China. And you have developed enzymes to do it, as you said, your own way. I'm saying all this to say that this is an example that says very boldly and clearly and loudly that the limits of impossible have shrunk, and that this merging between rights and tackling issues such as terrorism, poverty, precariousness, and other issues is possible when we have the armada of great lawyers, judges, human rights militants, and scholars who would explore this notion of rights within the frame of RMR. I mean by RMR, retro-moderate relativism, that adopts within the cultural and social and historical identitarian ingredients, integrates the notion of human rights and the pacts of human rights without neglecting the fight against terrorism, which is basically against the human rights. All generations merged, political, economical, solidarity, rights. Terrorism is against all this. But terrorism has various emanations, and we need to face those various different emanations to build up metabolisms with antibodies to switch from just countering and preventing, which is reactional, to immunizing. And this is taking the diving within the educational curriculums and working with pupil and looking at societies not as blocks but as various layers. We have family, we have kids, we have teens, and by the way, teens today are calling themselves Z generation and Alpha generation, and they are living in Twitter, they're living on the social media, and they have their own kings and queens. Some people do have fellowships of 140 million, and they are true influencers.
I'm glad you follow the mega trends of the pervasive influence of social media
This
in
is
the age of
reality.
digital technology. This is a new reality.
Yeah.
People of our age will have to face the new reality. Now, Chinese people and the Chinese government do want to share dividends of peaceful evolution and cultural prosperity with the proposal and advocacy of a BRI. However, since 70 years ago, when the People's Republic of China was founded, China tried very hard to navigate our own course of independent development, but that somehow runs the risk of, creating differences with the West that argues, politicians at least, one size fits all. You follow our model of a liberal democracy or liberal market economy, or you will be dead. But China prospered and followed our own roadmap. This has created serious trade wars and ideological frictions between the United States and China. President Trump wants to fight a war, not just the trade war. Trade war is, by the way, only the tip of the huge iceberg. And therefore, we see the differences between democracy in the Western sense and the Chinese way. Morocco has also become a democracy. But we keep asking the question as to whether there is a shock therapy, a universal therapy, or China should be given the leeway, the latitude to think about its own future, its own way. This is a big question, but a developing country may give a third answer.
Thank you, Ray, for this wonderful question, inspiring question. Because at the end of the day, this planet is nothing more than little tiny pale blue dots suspended in a sunbeam. And we are one extended family navigating in a space to which we know no end. You know how much we do invest yearly basis on weaponry because we are afraid from each other? $17 trillion. Direct investment and collateral damages. When we divide this titanesque amount on humans of this extended family, members of this extended family, it gives us $2,288 each, which could suffice for schooling, for health issues, for food and other matters. It is wasted on weapons of which we don't use over 13%, even in the times of war. I love this concept that has been developed by Mr. Xi Jinping of common destiny, which realizes indeed that this planet is tiny and that we cannot afford any third world war. We cannot afford any more wasting of the natural resources, of the atmosphere, of the ozone. We need to work hard to build up this peace process that would spare those deadly investments and that would lead us towards this future.
Now, why do you think so many Chinese tourists start to go to your country? Is that only because of the preferential visa policy, or do you think Morocco somehow represents an alternative truth?
History says, Ray, that we had the honor to do the first step 1,000 years ago when Ibn Battuta came to China and discovered its wisdom and its wonders in his great book, غرائب الأمصار وعجائب الأسفار. The wonders of the countries, and China occupied a very salient place, and the news of the travels. So it has been a tradition for Moroccans to look at China as a country of know-how, of expertise, of excellency, and also of wonders. And we have been attracted to China. And Chinese learned about Morocco from this great scholar.
The United States is very much concerned about China assuming the world leadership, which means in the understatement China could somehow rebuild the world order. China says that's not what we want. We just want to have a further integration through the idea of free trade and fair trade. Why do you think China is accused of trying to take over the center stage? How should China position itself in the new emerging world order?
You know, Ray, competition has always been a catalyst in our world.
Competition?
Yes.
Instead of a confrontation?
Competition. And it is a good and efficient catalyst. But also, it needs to be managed. America is competing against China. China has been competing against colonialism, against poverty, and against other powers in the region and elsewhere. But China had this response by building and not by demolition. And this is exactly the response that was provided in Kashgar and for the province that was invested by terrorism and so on. What I pledge you to keep on doing is this. Keep on being inspiring by your force and living up to this heavy responsibility that has been bestowed upon your shoulders because of your success.
Thank you so much. Of course, this interview is one of yet another enlightening discussions for us to draw inspirations from people like you. And you have given us a good reason to align ourselves with other major developing countries and emerging markets to facilitate the dynamic process of globalization. With that, we come to the end of this very useful brainstorming with one of the renowned Islamic scholars who comes from Morocco. I thank you very much for watching this show. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your views.